right. Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest because I'm an avid reader myself. I'm a bibliophile and I love writing. And I've got Nick Hutchison from Team BookThinkers. He's going to talk to us all about authorship, writing, entrepreneurship. I'm really happy to invite entrepreneurs such as Nick on the show and share their stories. So Nick, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate the opportunity, my friend. Hey, what's the best book you've read in 2023 since you're such a bibliophile?
Oh man, I'd tell you the best book in 2023 was The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio. And it aptly explains everything that is going on to the T since before the internet came on, the 80s, 90s, that was like the best time. And now kind of US is in this turmoil. It explains everything beautifully.
Yeah, I've read Principles by Ray, but I haven't read this newer book.
Yeah. So yeah, check it out. It's really awesome.
Cool. Appreciate you indulging my curiosity there for a minute.
Yeah. So kind of share your story, provide a good backdrop from which we can talk all about books and reading and writing. I'm really excited for this convo.
Cool. So what might surprise you and anybody that can see my background today, because I've got like 1,000 books behind me, is that I was not much of a reader growing up. So when I was growing up, I was more of the athlete stereotype. I wrestled. I was captain of the wrestling team. I played football and I loved sports. And you couldn't pay me to read a book back then. And that behavior sort of continued with me throughout my college experience for the most part as well. But I took an internship going into my senior year of college at a local software company. And my boss, Kyle, at the time, I think he recognized some unfulfilled potential, right? I was like a 20-year-old sort of cocky, know-it-all type of guy. And he said, hey, man, I think you could benefit from listening to business podcasts. So that's how it all started for me. I was commuting an hour each way to this internship 5 days a week. And I was listening to podcasts where successful people were talking about what they did to become successful. And very quickly, I realized that so many of those people gave at least some credit for their success to the books that they were reading. And I heard the same titles over and over and over again, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I heard Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, just so many of the same titles. And I thought, you know what, if all these people are reading, I should check it out. Like there's got to be something I'm missing if I'm not willing to read these books. And lo and behold, for the last 10 years, I've been an avid reader in the world of personal development, business books. I have an agency called BookThinkers, where I help authors promote and market their books now. I just put out my first book, Rise of the Reader, Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn. And I also have a huge online social media community where we do daily book recommendations and all sorts of stuff like that. So that's kind of my story.
Yeah. And I love this story, throughout your journey with BookThinkers and personal development. Kind of, I know I shared mine. Kind of share which books have had the most significant impact. You've talked about habits of highly effective people. I love that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But kind of give the audience some recommendations.
Sure. I think the first book that flipped my world upside down, other than Rich Dad Poor Dad, was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. So I read that book around 2017. I was working a full-time software sales job. I was in a cubicle and I wanted to travel. I wanted to break free. I wanted to become location independent, maybe even build my own business someday. And that book gave me the language and the confidence to start making that happen. There's a sad reality, I think, where so many people are forced to work jobs that they hate in order to buy a house they can't afford or cars they can't afford. And it's just such, life is too short to live a life that you don't fully love. And I think Tim's book set me on this journey of like designing something that's fulfilling to me, where I actually love my life and I'm healthy and I'm happy, got great relationships. And it's all because of books like that.
Yeah. The other thing that I've really noticed, because before Kindle and before Audible came on, was I had a goal to read one business and one personal development book a month. And then with like YouTube and like Audible and podcasting, there's changes in reading habits. People are less physical book and more Kindle and like YouTube on the go. So what are some common challenges you've seen with this change in reading consumption patterns and habits?
Well, a lot of times people actually ask me about audiobooks. Like, what are your thoughts on audiobooks and YouTube videos? Here are my thoughts. 80% of the inputs to our brain, meaning 80% of our ability to connect with a piece of information and retain it, organize it, store it, is visual. So by default, if you're only listening to a piece of information and you don't have that feel of the pages in your hand, and you're multitasking by driving or you're at the gym or something, you're at a disadvantage. So I recommend physical paper books. Physical paper books, they create an opportunity to monotask, to focus on one thing at a time. And that gives us the ability to digest and reflect and implement the information better than anything else. Now, I will admit too, Kindle is changing things. One of my mentors, his name is Kevin Horsley. He wrote a great book called Unlimited Memory. He thinks that reading a physical paper book is like using a map, like a printed out map while you're in the car. He's like, a GPS is just so much better. I mean, with a Kindle, you can highlight your notes, you can export them, you have color coding, you have the ability to look up definitions in real time. You could fit 1,000 books in your pocket. And I see some of those benefits, but I just love the physical paper books.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Like, some people are visual, some people are auditory. I know one guy, he doesn't read books, but he watches kind of like, YouTube clips of these books. So it's kind of get like the key points. And I know it's, a couple of my friends are using ChatGPT to kind of get summarized and just get bullet points. I know it's not going to be the whole immersive experience. But it's, so amazing how technology is allowing people to, get the information faster. And if you have the physical book, you actually read it, and then you can kind of the cliff notes. The other thing is, what's interesting is you emphasize the importance of implementation over mere reading, and you talked about kind of like listening on the go, but that's not the full thing. And share a personal story where implementing a concept from a book led to a major breakthrough for you.
Last year, I read a great business book called $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. And at the time, my agency was much smaller than it is today. So I only had one other full-time person on the team, and we were doing like $10,000 to $15,000 a month in revenue. And I was looking for a way to increase my average deal size, maybe offer a new service. And somebody recommended that I read and implement $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. So I start going through the book and I'm going through all the exercises. And there are some exercises around creating some new services for your ideal customer. And I found something that was actually somewhere between 5 and 10 times my average deal size in terms of price point. And I started offering it and people started buying it. And my business grew like wildfire. So I went from like 10 to 15K a month in revenue to having 40, 50, $60,000 months not that long after implementing the book. So when you talk about return on investment, $20 in a few hours of your time to make an additional 6 figures in revenue, like almost right off the bat, I mean, that's what a book can do if properly used. And it shocks me that somebody could read Alex's book, $100 Million Offers, knowing that he's managing a business portfolio of hundreds of millions and he's done it and it works, and then just breeze right past the exercises and not do them, So like, that's what I'm here to advocate for, is take action on the information that you learn, because action creates results, and results are what we're reading for. We're not reading for entertainment in the world of personal development and nonfiction, right? We're reading to change our lives.
Yeah. And also, it's like, people think, oh, this book is too expensive, but we think of it as investment. Like you spend $20 on a book, and that's like an investment. And you're investing in yourself, and investing in yourself actually has the greatest ROI, more than marketing, advertising, more than any like stock or any real estate or investment. So next is this idea for I love this idea of reading habits, and talk to people about developing and implementing a daily reading habit, just like, meditation or working out or, eating right.
Yeah, consistency is key. So small, manageable steps. Sometimes I'll meet people and they'll tell me, Nick, I appreciate what you do, but I'm not a reader. I can't read books. I don't have time to read books. And so I'd say, this is what I typically say. I go, if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month, do you think you could do it? And they're like, yeah, oh, of course, I could read 5. And so they've fallen in my trap. What they've admitted is that they could read, but they don't see enough value to create the time. And so next is let's toss out trying to find time to read. Let's replace low impact activities like scrolling on social media or binge watching Netflix shows with reading a good book. Not the whole activity, but just a little bit. And here's the magic formula from my perspective. If you can replace 15 minutes of scrolling in the morning and the first 15 minutes of your Netflix in the evening with reading a good book, that's 30 minutes a day. For somebody who's just starting out, 30 minutes might represent 20 pages. If you could do that 5 days a week, that's 100 pages a week. You and I both know the average book these days is 200, maybe 250 pages. So that's a book every 2 weeks, just by replacing something that's mostly meaningless, right? Short dopamine hit, long-term nothing, with reading a good book that serves your future self. Consistency, just small little steps in the right direction. And you'll read 20, 25 books a year that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Just it's like running a marathon. It's like you don't start out running 26 miles. You start out with 3 miles or a mile. So I love this idea of, daily reading habits and high performance. I think was it called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which is another.
It's one of my favorites.
I think you and me, we share kind of the same wavelengths. And then also, kind of Tony Robbins, he talks about how leaders are readers. You've parlayed this idea of reading and books into the evolution of book thinkers, and how has book thinkers evolved over the years? What are some key lessons you've learned about content creation, engaging with an audience? We'll set the stage for the podcast as well.
Yeah. So my business today, I've got 10 people on the team. And we serve hundreds of authors a year, helping them promote and market their books. We do so through posting on social media to our audience. We help them get booked on podcasts to talk about their books. And we also help them create short form video content so that they can build their own platform and go get on shows themselves and sell into their audience and that type of stuff. As part of growing my community, at some point, I just realized so many of my favorite authors were following the page. They were engaging with the content, commenting on reviews. And I just thought, you know what, I should start a podcast and I should interview some of these people and I should have follow-up conversations about the books. And so that developed sort of independent of the services that we provide. But I was very, very, very fortunate to interview some of my favorite authors. I mean, I've had Grant Cardone and Lewis Howes and Alex Hormozy and Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene and Vanessa Van Edwards and so many of these legends in the space. And I've been able to get to know them and interview them and learn from them. And it's like, some of these people charge so much money per hour for their time, but on an interview, all of a sudden it's free, so it's like the greatest life hack ever.
I love that. It's like asymmetric, you get a huge return for very little. And so what have you learned from interviewing authors like Grant Cardone, Lewis Howes, Robert Greene, another one of my favorite authors?
Yeah, he's amazing. Well, I've learned quite a bit. I would say one of the through lines that I've realized over time is that nothing is as fancy as it seems, and none of these people are superheroes. They're all just normal people, and they might have persisted like a little bit longer than the average Joe, and they've found some success. But none of it happened overnight. Like Grant Cardone is in his 60s and he started 30 something years ago, right? But he's only been relevant for 10 years. So there were like 20 years or so in there where he was grinding and nobody knew his name. Robert Greene's a little bit of an outlier. I mean, he's been writing for over 20 years now. I think everything he writes and touches turns to gold, right? He's like 7 for 7 in terms of New York Times bestsellers right off the bat. And the 48 Laws of Power is the most banned book in the US prison system, which is just like a cool badge of honor, I guess. But again, just a normal person. I think he suffered a heart attack or a stroke a couple of years ago. Like these people are no different than you and I. They just are really passionate about something and they just stuck with it for a very long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, stick at it, keep at it. We're kind of coming towards the end, and advice for aspiring readers, for someone just starting their journey into what kind of niche, like personal development, business. What advice would you give them to make the most out of their reading? Like, you go to a Barnes Noble or what, Amazon, it's just like so many titles. Where do you go? Where do you start?
Yeah, I love to recommend starting with an intention. I think these books solve problems, they build skill sets, they satisfy curiosities. And so you should know exactly why you're reading the book that you're reading. If you have a problem that's been persisting and you just can't get rid of it, there probably is a good book out there that can help you overcome that problem. Because these books do condense decades of somebody else's lived experience and their greatest life lessons into days of reading. So it is a shortcut. And these books do solve problems, but you should read with that intention. In fact, I recommend in my book, Rise of the Reader, I recommend that people start the process by setting a SMART goal. So for anybody in the audience that's not familiar with the acronym, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, meaning realistic, relevant, meaning you're emotionally connected to the outcome, and T stands for time bound. So when I build a goal around a book, like let's say The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, I don't just read the book. I set a SMART goal, something like find and implement at least 2 ways to use the compound effect in my business by the end of December. So by the time I'm done with the book, I know whether or not it achieved its goal, right? I'm writing that intention on the inside cover. I'm reviewing it every time I read another chapter, and I'm looking for ways to implement the book, to take action on the book and actually use what somebody like Darren Hardy has written about in my own business.
Yeah. And I love that intention. The other question is, how do you quote hack, like kind of like either speed read, or I know some people recommend skimming, and just kind of so they can kind of get like they have the question or intention and kind of get the most out of the book for the least amount of effort.
Yeah, that's a great question. I go back and forth on this. I am not a big fan of speed reading. I've read plenty of books, I've practiced plenty of techniques, but my goal is not to finish the book in the shortest period of time. My goal is to take action on the information that I've learned. And for me, I need a full understanding of the entire book before I choose to take action on something. I want to understand the case studies. I want to understand the author's progression of their messaging. I want to understand every potential action I could take so that I only choose the ones that have the most leverage, right? That will create the most change in my business. Like sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, I found what I needed on page 2. How do you know there wasn't something on page 3 that was 100 times more beneficial for you? You don't know. So I recommend not slow and steady. Like I read very fast compared to the average person, but I recommend reading with intention and completing the entire book and then choosing to take action on something. You know, the idea of like removing sub-vocalization to increase reading speed makes sense. I just can't get there yet. Maybe if you interviewed me in like 5 years, I'd be like, you have to remove sub-vocalization and read every 15th page, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah. Finally, so I love this. Like, we'll kind of conclude with this final question: is how has your personal mission and vision evolved as you've helped millions of readers and authors connect? And what's next for you and Book Thinkers? And how can people check your podcast out, your website, your social media, etc.?
You know what? I genuinely believe that the right book at the right time can change somebody's life. And so my entire business helps authors get more exposure for their books so that they can get the message in front of the right person. And my book helps readers get more out of those books. So everything is centered around this idea that books change lives. And I'm at a phase in my life where I genuinely enjoy the passage of time. And so what does the future look like for me? I think it's more of the same, just at a bigger scale, right? I'm in the middle of this compounding, to go back to Darren Hardy. I'm in the hockey stick, and I can't wait to see where it's going to end up. You know, progress is a big piece of my present moment. It drives fulfillment. So the present moment isn't stagnant for me. I think it's something that's changing and growing and evolving, but the future doesn't look so different than today. It's just bigger and better, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And for all the listeners out there, let's thank Nick for coming on. Like I said, I'm a bibliophile, and I just love the power of books, and just you can so much knowledge and information right there. Like you said, condensed it all for you there, organized it. And all of his resources will be in the links and show notes. Be sure to check him out. He's on Instagram. He's got over 100K followers, LinkedIn, and his website, and all these resources will be in the links. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it.